All right.
Okay, I got it. Well, obviously my talk today, as I said, is going to be about freedom from fear, the true message of the crucifixion. But actual fact that the message of the crucifixion is actually the message of the resurrection, because the resurrection gave the message that there was an afterlife and that there's nothing to fear. You know, because all fear, all earthly fear is rooted in a fear of death. You know, what's going to happen when we die? And like, I'm going to die like atheists, like, you know, I believe there's nothing after this. But anyway, don't want to get into all that. But he assured us that there was nothing to be afraid of as long as you believed it. And interestingly enough, the resurrection has been reduced to a footnote in the Bible. It's all about the crucifixion, you know, and then he got resurrected, and they don't make much of a fuss about that. But that was the whole object of the exercise, was to show that there was an afterlife, you know, and there was nothing to fear. What I wanted to talk about really, and that, but the crucifixion had a positive side, as Jesus says in the book. Is it even something as bad as that can have a positive side? Because in a world that's split into perfect opposites, it's got perfect negative, perfect good, you know, so we have to expect stuff like that. But he says, even something as bad as my crucifixion does have a positive side. Well, his positive, I'll get to the positive side. But if we start looking at the biblical account of the Bible, it's, for a start, it says he died for the sake of our sins, right? Which makes it, which implies that we should feel guilty about this. Like, you know, he died for you, you know, you should feel guilty. But that's a negative way of looking at it that they've worked on. There's a very positive way of looking at it as well. Because when you say he died for our sins, he died, and then he was reborn, he was resurrected. And then he gave the message, his actual resurrection, that he appeared alive after dying, was his message, you know, to his disciples. That was his message, that there is everlasting life and there's nothing to fear. I'll get to talk about his disciples later. The everlasting life. Now, Jesus always talked about the God in heaven, and what we have to remember, that hell wasn't invented then. The Catholics invented hell later on when they put the religion together around Christianity. At the time of Christ, the gods believed were like the Roman gods and whatever, like the local people would, like they believed in the Jewish faith and all that. The Jews were waiting for the Messiah, but as far as they're concerned, he didn't come. You know, they're still waiting for him now, the Jews, whatever all that's about. But the positive side of it, when he said he died for our sins, I've already been over that, sorry. The bit where he was hanging on the cross, he's hanging on the cross, and the crowds were insulting him, they were haranguing him. And the thief on that side started haranguing him along with the crowd. You know, if you're the Messiah, why don't you come down off the cross and all that? And the other thief then told the other thief to shut up and said, look, this man has done nothing at all. He's done nothing whatsoever. We deserve our fate, but he's done nothing. Then Jesus said to him, today you'll be with me in paradise. Now, those thieves couldn't have been just thieves. That was a mistranslation, because the Romans didn't punish theft. They considered that a civil crime, unless you stole something off them, I should imagine. But they didn't bother. They certainly wouldn't crucify somebody for thievery, but they would for robbery. And in other translations of the Bible, they were bandits or robbers. In fact, the Greek it was originally translated from, the Greek word was for robber, which they translated to thief. Now, robber suggests armed robbery. And the thief himself saying, we have done wrong and we deserve this punishment, which is a bit drastic. They must have something that they even themselves considered bad. But Jesus told them, you're going to paradise with me. There was no mention of hell, you see. Now, there's no mention. That message is, if that's carried on and be remembered, no matter what they may tell you in times to come, I never mention no hell. It's something they've made up. And if you believe my word, as I said to that thief, those thieves, those men, bandits on the cross, that is the truth. Today, you will be with me in paradise. There is no hell. And those men, if they were murderers or whatever they'd done, there was no hell for them. They'd be in paradise with him, you see. And that's the positive side of that message. Also, another message he gave while he was on the cross was that when they gathered around it, now in the course, you must have read this in the course where he talks about charity. Now, charity, it says, like charity, when we think of charity, we generally think of like helping somebody out who's in need of our help, like somebody's poor and we give them some money, like the charity. It's helping by giving them money or food or something like that. It's a, but true charity, via A Course in Miracles, if somebody upsets you, you realize that you give them the charity that they don't know what they're doing. You understand the truth. You understand that you are spirit. He doesn't. So give him charity. Give him charity. He just doesn't understand. That's all, right? Don't get upset about it. He just doesn't understand. And Jesus' greatest demonstration of that was when he was hanging on the cross after getting close to his death. And he said, Lord, forgive them for they don't know what they do. He was giving them the greatest charity of all, because none of us will ever suffer the pain that he suffered on that cross. It was unbelievable. It also says that in the course, another positive thing that you students can use it as a benchmark, because you will feel in your life sometimes you've been crucified over something, and something that's that bad that you feel like you've really been hard done by. And so use my suffering as a benchmark and know that the Holy Spirit will never allow you to suffer anything like that. And know that I suffered the worst, nothing you will suffer will ever equal what I suffered that day. And what he suffered that day, when you look into it, is beyond belief. Apart from being scourged with those whips with bits of bone and bits of metal on them all day long, when they actually nailed him up on the cross, what is little known or actually even talked about, the cross was actually an instrument of torture. And it went beyond just hanging there, you see, because when you're hanging like that, now, wait a minute. What I'm about to say was originally told to me by a Roman Catholic priest years ago when I attended, because my first wife was Irish, God bless her, and I became a Catholic to marry and the other, so I joined the Catholic Church, and I went along with it for a while, but that's another story. But anyway, one Easter, the priest, he gave this homily and said that in the Nazi concentration camps, they decided to crucify a few people and find out what effects it actually had on people. I haven't looked that up to verify that. I mean, but I've been looking up to verify it, because whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. But it has been tried and tested by who I don't know. But actually, the report goes like this: when you hang them up, they can't breathe. You see, and when this is probably well known, but if you knock a nail through that part of your hand, it can't support you. It will just tear out. It's that little bit of flesh cannot support a hanging body, so it has to go through the wrists, through the metacarpals. And oddly enough, the Shroud of Turin has got the nail holes through the wrists, right? Because you can hang from the metacarpals, but you can't hang from your hands. When you ram a nail about that long through there, it goes straight through the nerves, the nervous system, which will instantly rack you with nervous pain. When they banged it through his feet, which would when one going straight through his feet, in order to breathe while you're hanging there, you have to pull yourself up like that to get air in your lungs, then let yourself out again. Pushing yourself up on the nails and dragging yourself up on the nails and dropping down on the nails. And you had to do that for every single breath. And in these experiments, they most lasted about 2 hours, and some went on for days. So it's hard to imagine suffering that for days. You'd have the strength to do that. But Jesus had been scourged, whipped, beaten up, made to carry the cross. And he could only have lasted a few hours at the most, hanging like, trying to breathe like that. And when you consider, when you consider what he was going through, when he said, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing, he was asking one hell of a lot. I mean, that is charity. I mean, what they did to him was just beyond belief. And actual fact, do you know the word excruciating agony comes from being crucified? Excruciating means as in being crucified. It is that bad. There is no other torture that equals that pain. They couldn't have hurt him anymore if they tried. It was unbelievable. And as a benchmark, that is something that's no matter what happens to anybody, it's never going to be as bad as that. And also, the whole idea of this mission, it was a mission, as for want of a better word. When he came down, he knew he was going to be crucified, because it was in the prophecies. You'll suffer, then you will be released and go back to the afterlife or whatever. But it's moved me that as talking about that. My God. You know, and also while he was hanging on the cross, just before he died, when he gave up the ghost and said, Jesus gave up his spirit, Jesus, forgive him. He just couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't lift himself up one more time. And the thieves, or the bandits next to him, were suffering the same. They were going up and down as well. That's the only way they could breathe. They weren't tied to the cross. They were nailed the same as he was. And they were the same. The reason why the soldiers came and smashed their legs, not Jesus, the thieves, they smashed their legs, was because the show was over. Jesus was the show, right? And they were the support act by either side. Once Jesus had died, the show was over. So they went and smashed the bandits' legs because they no longer could lift themselves up, and they suffocated, as Jesus did. And, you know, and that brings us also around to how the age is. The Roman Empire was a very, very cruel, very cruel empire. Very cruel empire. To what they did to Jesus and those bandits was just day by day routine there. You know, and Jesus came into a world where that was normal, where that was just normal. You know, life was so cheap. And that was how Jesus was put there in that era, because he demonstrated a love that was unknown there. It was unknown. And that's what, like these, whatever these priests were in the temple that condemned him, what they were believing in, I don't know. But it certainly wasn't in love, in perfect love. You know, and Jesus going there to teach these people like there is love. The only way with his brotherly love, he gathered his brothers around him, his disciples, who in actuality were his students, same as we are gathered around the Course of Miracles now. We're gathered around Jesus now. We are his students, his disciples, same as they were, but they were with him. Once he was taken down from the cross and they put him in that cave, when they came, when they came back 3 days later and he'd been resurrected, right? And the reason why he came back in January, his main point, because his 12 disciples or his 12 students were not yet awakened. In the course where it says, once I started, it said, once you have to teach yourself this, you have to learn to forgive. You have to learn to forgive. You've got to do this, you know. But God takes the last step. God takes the last step. Right? So when Jesus was resurrected, they went to the cave and there was nobody there. There was just these cloths, just these, the cloths or whatever he was wrapped in. They weren't there. And I mean, in the Bible, it says there was 2 angels there. Some different accounts. Some say there was 2 men. Some says there's 1 man. And one says there's an angel. The only common thing is that they're all dressed in white. I don't know who they were in the cave. There's nothing about the Course of Miracles about whoever they were. But it goes on to say in the Bible, the only one that really covers the resurrection beyond saying what happened. Well, now John goes on a bit, but he talks more in terms of where he traveled to. Like Jesus went there and his spirit went there. But the most interesting one, well, interesting, but the account in Luke, when he was resurrected. Now, some of the disciples went to the cave and found him gone. It doesn't say which disciples it was. But anyway, later on, he was walking 6 miles outside Jerusalem. Some of his disciples, they aren't named, were walking to this village. And while they were walking there, a stranger hurried along and caught up with them and started to talk with them. And he asked, what's local news? And the disciples said, well, haven't you heard? Jesus Christ was crucified. And he said, Christ was crucified, but he was crucified to bring the word. And then he carried on to talk about prophets and stuff like that. Finally, they reached the village just as the night was falling. And the stranger said, I have far to go. So the disciples said to him, well, look, you can stay the night here because, you can carry on in the morning, night's falling. And he said, okay. And they sat round, and as they broke bread, he revealed himself. And all it says in Luke, they were shocked and then awakened, and then Jesus left them. So what happened there was just like us waiting for that final last step when Jesus steps in. For them who'd known him, he come back to give them that final last step by revealing himself. And that can only mean that he disappeared. I mean, it can't mean that he died because he was already dead. I know it's a supernatural thing, but we talk about supernatural ends here. And he awoke those students or disciples of his, those ones that were there, he awoke them, and then off they went to spread his word. And his job was done. And that that freedom The true message of freedom was what these students now knew and had gone off to spread it. And that was the true message of the crucifixion. And that's the message that we're spreading now. That's what we're teaching now. And with each of us that learn it, we're disciples of his, whether we choose to teach it or not, because we have the knowledge, same as he did. I mean, like Christ, it's the word Christ itself it stems from Greek, the ancient Greek for Christos, which means the anointed one. The anointed one means to make holy. To make holy to means to become whole with God. So he was Christ the anointed. Back in the day, he was Jesus the anointed one, because he had the knowledge, and he's anointing us with the knowledge. I mean, we could call ourselves Stephen Christ, Lloyd Christ, or Steph Christ if we wanted, though it seems appropriate. But all it means is we have the knowledge, and that's what it is. And when it's interestingly, I read in the UR text. I haven't got the UR text, but I think I read it online or something. Jesus in that mentions that he wasn't the first coming; he was the second coming. Because, like, first of all, when the dream began, and that they realised the error, that the negativity that existed here wasn't expected. That was the error. They didn't. When it's split into perfect opposites, you're going to have this extreme negative, which was that no, oops, that's the mistake. We didn't really want that, but you're stuck in it. You see, they sent, according to that, they sent angels down, but they wouldn't listen to reason. Like the beings who were here, the aspects of God who were here and dreaming, thought this was so amazing they wouldn't listen to anything what the angels had to say. So they had to abandon it. And then later on, Jesus came down and was born here to sow the seed that has grown into the movement that we are now. You know, he couldn't do it on his own at the time. All he could do was set that seed. And that crucifixion apparently was a crucial part of it, because it really attracted attention to what he was about to do. The whole thing was a plan, you know, and also he had to be that badly beat. I mean, I think they overdid it a bit, really. But he had to be seen to be dead when they put him in that tomb. Otherwise, when he come back to life, they could have said he was in a coma or in some kind of catatonic shock that you can recover from. You know, like in the old days, like Victorian times, they used to, when their medicine wasn't very good, they used to bury people and then find out, like, you know, they were lower burying people alive, because there are such things that cause people to appear to be dead when they're not. And that had to be, and I should imagine back in those days when they were quite fond of killing people the way they did, they would have noticed that certain people would recover from things and weren't as dead, you know. So I think he was hurt that badly to ensure that there was no question that he wasn't dead. And when he arose from the tomb, he must have been through some kind of supernatural agency. And incidentally, there's a film out called Risen, which tracks the Roman soldiers looking for his body. And it's not recorded in the Bible. I don't know where this is written down, but it's supposed to be a great film, even though I can't get it. I mean, I cancelled my television. I've only got Netflix, which I'm watching now and again, but it ain't on there. I got fed up with the telly, and so I just watch Netflix and YouTube, and that's it. And it isn't on there, but it's supposed to be a great film. You know, Charles, the Roman soldier, was ordered to go and find out what's happened to this body. Is what happened to him on the way, and apparently he got converted in the end. You know, that might be in Acts or something. I haven't read Acts. So, that is pretty much my message. What time is it? Oh, it took me 24 minutes. I thought it would took me a longer. That's
time, Stephen. You know, I'm thinking about what the course says in the section called I think it's the crucifixion, where it says, "Teach not that I died in vain, but rather that I live in you, in your mind." You know, teach not that I died in vain, but rather that I live in you.
That's right, because the resurrection is now a metaphor for our awakening.
Right.
You know, we awaken and realize that we're not, you know, we're still here, but we're not physical. We're not physical. We are of God, and everything is of God. It's a realization, isn't it? A recognition. It's almost like an aha moment, as Rupert Spira calls it, an aha moment. Aha moment, yeah. And that's best what it is. And
I also love the part where he says, the other teaching, or the true teaching of the crucifixion, is that if you are equating yourself with the destructible, so with the body, you are equating yourself insanely. You know, you are regarding yourself insanely. That's the true message.
And suffering through it.
Right.
And suffering through it. It's a difficult thing to realizing you're in a dream. It's a very difficult thing to do. you know, but That's why, like when I first started learning the course, you know, I heard people were taking up to 10 years, 20 years to get it. And I thought, well, how can it take that long? And here I am 14 years later. Now I know how it takes. I know why it takes so long. You've got to, you're converting yourself to a totally different way of perceiving things.
Right.
And it's a slow process.
Yes, it is.
Some people awaken, in the book itself, it mentions that some people awaken through supernatural means, like they're aided for some reason. Some people are chosen to just awaken like that, you know, but they're few and far between as far as I can see.
Right.
And everybody's given a different awakening period. Some people take a long time, some people take a short time.
Yes.
I've been trying to go that fast, that last step with God. I've been trying to take that, but every time I try to take it, I'll get slapped down. I'll get these Kundalini things that whack me about. And I was trying to figure it out for ages. Like, you know, something beats me up whenever I start trying to. It never hurts me. It never hurts me. Just Kundalini, it just spasms up my back. You know, like, stop trying to wake yourself up. And I thought, well, what the look? Why can't I just wake up? Why don't you let me do it? And then it dawned on me. The reason being, if I woke up, I wouldn't be able to teach the way I am at present, because I talk about I talk much about the metaphysical side, the intellectual side of it. That's what I've been doing. And like my dear friend Kate Greaves, when she holds her, she's like a sermon. She is, like, you know, because she's got. I think Jesus has taken the last step with Kate, because she's qualified to speak the way she does, you know. And also Erin Michelle Galito, I love her stuff. She's so straightforward, you know. The Jesus that speaks through her is straightforward, you know, because when Jesus speaks through people, he doesn't have his body, does he? He's a spirit, so he can only use what's inside the people's heads. You know, like when you're using a computer, you can only do what the computer's programmed to do. You can't do anything beyond that. And the brain is the same. What my, for instance, person, because sometimes I feel Christ is talking through me, and he sounds exactly like me. Because sometimes I've said things, and afterwards I thought, well, I didn't think that. And I learn through what I'm saying. That's why I teach so much. That's why I've made over 600 videos. Just keep teaching and keep learning. Keep teaching, keep learning, you know, and he's there. And I can tell, like, when Erin Michelle, when she does her monthly video, she always rocks like this and her voice changes, but she's still Erin, and Jesus can only use the accents, whatever's in that computer inside that brain. Jesus can only use what's in that computer, and that's why she still sounds like Erin, but Jesus is doing the talking, but he's using her computer. Jesus didn't have an accent, right? He's not going to start talking like an old Hebrew or start talking in tongues, because he's spirit now. And he knows everything, because in spirit of oneness, we know all. Oneness is oneness.
Right.
That story used to tell about the can you speak Chinese? Like, where, like, if you asked a friend if they can speak Chinese, you ask them knowing they can't speak Chinese, because most Western people can't speak Chinese. So it's nothing to do with Chinese, but it's just can you speak Chinese? And they're going to say no. They say, well, when does your knowledge of Chinese end then, right? And they're going to say, well, what are you talking about? I've never been able to speak Chinese. How could it have ended? He says, so, okay, in a world of beginnings and endings, right, you're speaking Chinese, right? This world is beginnings and endings. Something here that ends must have had a beginning, right? So if your knowledge of Chinese can begin if you decided to speak Chinese, right? Yes. So therefore, your ignorance of Chinese would end when you learn to speak Chinese, right? Yes. Therefore, how can something that never had a beginning have an end? You don't know Chinese. But if you learn to speak it, it would have a beginning, then it could have an end. So how comes your Chinese, you don't know Chinese? I don't know if I'm explaining this right now, but it works out. His knowledge of Chinese ended when he was born. All our knowledges of Chinese or of any language ended when we were born. Because in oneness, we know everything. We know absolutely everything. I mean, like, it doesn't mean to say the Chinese language is perhaps in oneness, but it's possible. And its possibility is demonstrated by the way everything's been separated. Everything, all that is oneness. Well, not really. It's all that is in separation, an illusion. to demonstrate the opposition of God himself. God being perfect love, this is the opposite to him. There's love here because of the perfect opposite, but the hell is here too, because unfortunately the negative side of this existence can be pretty hellish, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I explained that Chinese thing very well. I got a bit mixed up there, but I hope you understood what I was getting at. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, my understanding too, Steve, is that Jesus was never here either.
Well, it's all a dream, isn't it? I mean, like, it's using the dream to interpret the truth.
Symbol in the dream, just like we are. But Jesus's task was to awaken the mind, and really has nothing to do with us as dream figures. We don't awaken. That's what I've learned from Jesus, is that a body cannot awaken. Only the mind can awaken that thinks it's a body.
But when it awakes, then it knows it's in a body, but the body isn't actually real.
Well, it knows that there is no bodies. They're all projections.
Well, it says in the course itself, so it might be in the psychotherapy bit, like you can't be totally awakened here because you wouldn't be able to stay here. Because if you knew 100% this is a dream, you can't stay here. You know, you would disappear. It's like you'd wake up. It says that somewhere. I think it's in the psychotherapy thing, something like that. So the closest we can get to it here.
What it's saying is that there is no you to awaken.
Well, there's no Stephen Dean, really.
When the mind awakens, you do disappear.
Yeah, that's
as simple as that, because it's the mind that's projecting you. So when the mind wakes up completely from the dream, it withdraws its projection. And there is no more world or no more you, whatever you want to call it. And, I personally experienced this in my own mind, where I was simply lifted off my couch and shown that I wasn't even here. There was no couch that I was sitting on.
But while you're here, there is.
Well, a figure made up in my mind to begin with.
Well,
We have to go back. We have to go back to, let's go to the disappearance of the universe, where Art and Persa say that Jesus could not suffer. He said his mind was completely healed. And it says a healed mind cannot suffer. And that's my understanding. And I truly believe that, because I've also experienced that in my own mind. Things that used to hurt me no longer hurt me, because part of that mind has been healed. Like if I hit my elbow or something, whereas a few years ago, wow, I would go, that hurts. Why do they call it the funny bone? Because it certainly isn't funny. Now when
it's a humorous bone. Go on, yeah.
Happens, I hardly feel a thing. It's like, and then Jesus said, your mind is being healed. You don't feel the same amount of pain. And as the mind is more and more, the mind is healed, pain becomes really a no thing.
Yeah. And when you're completely healed, like him hanging on the cross, you don't feel any pain at all. Even though what the pain of a normal wolf, it was designed to be as painful as possible, but he didn't feel that. And he didn't feel it enough to give these torturers charity by saying forgive them because they don't know what I'm doing. I know I'm dreaming, they don't. It goes down to that same simple quote from the course where it says, like, real charity is understanding that you're dreaming and they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Incidentally, what you said there, like, when you floated off the couch and all that, like, and you realize you had no body, there's no couch and all that. It reminds me of that old Buddhist saying. It goes, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is.
Right.
It's like you see the mountain, then you realize to be a spirit, then you come back to the world, then there is. It's the same thing. Like you said, then you floated in the air, then there was no mountain. Then you come back, then there is. Do you see what I mean? Those philosophies follow the same as course, really.
Yes.
I mean, it's all throughout the course. The course's main teaching is that there is no world. You're not here. And if you go to lesson 158, that straightens you out right away. It says, what have you learned? What is the knowledge that you have been given? You are a mind, in mind, and purely mind.
An only mind.
Only mind, same thing.
Yeah.
And that's, when I read that, for the 18th time, it finally got through to me.
Yeah, it's about getting through, and it really grasping it.
Yes.
Grasping it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like there's another line I read there, because I read it regular, same as yourself, and it says, true forgiveness is realizing that nothing has occurred.
Exactly.
That's the same thing. Nothing has occurred.
What keeps us trapped here in the dream is by judging it.
Yeah.
If we make anything real, we are simply saying the separation happened.
That's right. And it's the whole place. The whole place is set up for judgment because you've got positive and negative. You can think it's good or you can think it's bad. The whole thing is set right up for judgment. In fact, judgment itself doesn't exist in oneness, because how can you judge something in oneness? You've got to have just something. You've got to have two things. You can't judge one against itself. It doesn't exist, oneness. In fact, this last judgment business is ours, really. Judging that this is all a dream and off we go. Then
like we've all taken psychedelic drugs.
Yeah.
The Course says we are hallucinating.
Yeah.
And it says that in the Course, we're hallucinating, which means not us, not the figure in the dream. The mind is hallucinating. And
yeah. Well, the whole thing. Well, look, the whole. Each of us in our individual lives, our lives are our own opinions of what's going on. Like you can say, I like that person, I don't like that person. Well, I love everybody now, but I'm saying, like, as an example, like you can say, I don't like that painting, I like that painting. I don't like this, I don't like that. I don't like that sort of flower, but I like those sort of flowers. So really, it's a picture of likes and dislikes offering around you.
Right.
The person next to you has got another collection of likes and dislikes offering around them. Oh, I see, that's great. Well, I don't like that. Well, I do. This, that, the other. So really, all this floating around, it's all your projection, personal projection on a screen that's around you. The screen itself is the overall dream of the overall ego. Like, you know, all our egos together, the oneness of the ego, because it's created by one God. We all see the same thing. But it's like a play. We walk onto the stage and it's got the props and all the scenery and all that. But we supply the screenplay. You know, we decide what's going on in the play. There's nothing going on the stage until we walk on and start making a play up out of it. And the light shining on the stage shines there non-stop. If that's light shine on the stage, God is shining on it 24 hours on this earth. And then we walk on and have a little play and there's a little war and there's all banged explosions and we all die and it's still shining. Then another lot walk on and it all starts again. Let's have another play. Let's have a nice play this time. And then it all goes off and it shines on. And this goes on for eternity. Well, not eternity, until the very last person has that last judgment that this is a load of nonsense and I'm going. And that's the last judgment. God doesn't say there's nothing to judge.
Right.
As far as God's concerned, we don't exist. So what is he? There's nothing to judge anything against. In oneness, it's only that. Who is it? And there's only oneness. What's he going to judge anything against? That's not real.
That's scary. That's scary to the ego.
Oh, yeah, because the ego is the thought that you're separated from everybody else and trying to be better than everybody else. I mean, really, the whole idea, like Mickey taking. I mean, when I was a younger man, I was good at taking a Mickey out of people. I regret that now. People don't deserve that, you know. And all it is really is me sort of some way asserting that I'm better than them. That's all that is, you know. I mean, I'm think you're stupid, I do, and I'm better than you. That's silly, you know. It's like everybody is one, and every moment see brother in that's seeing your brother in everybody. Right. The great truth of that, the great truth, no matter who they are. Yeah, it's like
you know, and you really have to want that, right? Like that's what I learned. I just want to say, guys, now I think I'd like let's we're carrying on as we are here, but let's just open this up now for discussion.
Just one more thing I want to say about that oneness that we're talking about. There's a lot of confusion around that too, because when we, you know, if we say we're one with the tree, we're one with the bird, I'm one with the rabbit that was out in front of my house this morning. That's only a step.
Yeah,
because that oneness is still within the realm of consciousness, and consciousness has nothing to do with God, even though in some circles it's the end all be all. But if I'm talking here strictly as a course student, the course teaches you that consciousness is the realm of the ego. So when you're one with anything here, you're just sort of being one with the ego. The ego actually uses oneness because there is only one ego. Now it appears that there's many egos, but that's a trick.
That's it. The one ego's, yeah, The one ego creates all this, but our individual egos have got our individual ideas of what's going on.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it,
that's the trick. We all think of this as being separation, and the ego loves that. It said, I got them.
yeah, and also
there's only one mind.
there is just one mind. And while we're all thinking we're individual and leading these individual lives and doing this, that, and the other, like, you know, we're not concentrating on the truth. It's a world of distraction. Exactly. That's why they talk about the devil or whatever as the great deceiver, because he deceives us all the time while we're distracted. It's like in the disappearance of the universe, where they talk about the pyramids, and the dinosaurs, and all that. They just things to distract you. Like
absolutely.
Places like Petra, where they carved out a solid rock with chisels. You what? So anyway, so like you charge, okay, you somehow that was done, or did it? But there's people spending all their lives, archaeologists, trying to figure out how they did it, and then they write a book. I think this is how they did it, right? Okay, goes on the bookshelf. 100 years later, what's he said? Oh, well, I'll go and have another look. Oh, well, I think they did this, like he did. They spend their whole life devoted to figuring out what Petra was and how they built the pyramid, when they should have been looking somewhere else. It's look here, not there. Look here, not there. It goes on all the time here. Now, the whole world is look here, not there, isn't it? Really, even now with all the political stuff. I'm not going to talk about that. It's all about look over there while we do this. You know, I mean, it's all the same thing. It's just but it's the nature of the beast, the nature of the dream to do that. You know, as I said the last time I was talking on it, or maybe the time before, the whole thing's really like a play, and no matter who we perceive to be the evil ones in this play, we're the actors. And if you're in a play, like, you know, because I was an actor for years, and when you're a stage actor, I wasn't on television or anything like that. When you come off stage, the baddie, no matter how bad he is to the audience, when you go, well done, good job, you know, well acted, good stuff. What he pretended to be on there is just by the by. You know, he did a good job pretending to be like that because he got the audience all scared. And it's the same thing. When we come off here, when we go back to the afterlife, anybody who appears, I mean, I don't know, there does appear to be, there's lots of other lives. This isn't the only afterlife, it appears to me. There's lots of different ones, different dimensions. There's a lot more to it than this. And that would make sense because separation by a perfect mind would suggest that is what goes on. But it means, but a lot of, instead of going back to oneness, going back to our home, they leave here and end up back in another, go into another dimension. And it can take when they talk about thousands of thousands, like Jesus said, thousands of lives, you can have thousands of lives. That would only make sense if you was born in different dimensions and they were running concurrently. It's a lot of book of those Seth books and that talk about that, an entity, but he's one of these, they're from an illusional afterlife, an illusory afterlife, just as illusory as this is. This is this, this is that. There's a bald there with wearing all robes and hats on and all. Yeah, all right, maybe, but it isn't oneness, you know, and this is teaching us to get back to oneness. Right. You know, like the idea, like a lot of people when they die, they see their old grandma who takes them to a lovely house or something. Those dreams are illusory as this one is, because if everything's still separated in it, it's in a dream of separation, isn't it? So the only one we are going to go back that's truly is the oneness at the very end. We might go there straight away after this. But I think after us, what we've learned here, what we've learned as Course in Miracles students, we're far more likely to go back home to oneness unless we decide to come back here and carry on teaching. As it says in the course, a lot of students have risen again on their death and began to teach. You see, so
dimensions, we're just talking about that. We all probably do it as we're you know, progressing in the course, and you might not even realize it, because when you switch dimensions, all the players are still the same. It's just different outcomes happen.
Yeah, and little details change.
And both Stephanie and I have experienced switching dimensions together. I've switched dimensions 3 times, and once with Stephanie, we both did it together, and we knew it.
Well, that's cool. That really is cool. Well, I know there have been some overall dimensional changes. I think, like they keep talking about this Nelson Mandela effect, which they suggest we've somehow switched into a slightly different dimension. You know, look at it's just an
experience together. Where one day we were driving on a gravel road, and the next day we were driving on the same road and it was paved.
Yeah, you slipped.
Wow. Switch dimensions. Like it overnight. And Jesus Jesus prompted me saying, that we in one dimension, this road was gravel. In another dimension, it was paved.
So he showed you about the different he demonstrated to you the concept of different dimensions then.
Exactly.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
But there have been some changes. I mean, apparently there's some biblical change, like things have changed in the Bible. So I've checked it as well. Like, it's been the lion lays down with a lamb. Well, it's changed to the wolf lays down with a lamb. I don't know what that's all about. And for myself, years ago, my mother had there was a singer called Guy Mitchell and the Jordanaires, I think he was called, in the 60s. And my mother had a couple of his records, and one of his records was called Pink Pomeranians, right? I remember it, and I was a kid, and I used to play it, and I Pink Pomeranian. Years later, I was at 50 years later, I was in Bali, and I had cause to remember that song, Pink Pomeranians, and I sang it a bit, and I thought, I hadn't thought about that song for about 50 years. And the next day I saw a guy walking 2 Pomeranians carrying 2 big pink candy flosses. That was projection and reflection, that was. But the thing was, after I saw that, I thought, I recognised it. I thought, that is one hell of a synchronicity. But when I checked it, there's no record of Guy Mitchell ever singing a song called Pink Pomeranians. There's no record on the internet of Pink Pomeranians, not in any website, nothing. According to this dimension, he never sang Pink Pomeranians. And I know he did, because I used to listen to it. And when I first published that video I made about that synchronicity, one woman said, yeah, I remember that, Pink Pomeranians. And I forgot about that. But years later, when it came round in my memories, I messaged her and said, where did you hear Pink Pomeranians? But she never replied. But she must be the only person who actually remembers saying, I remember that song, so I'm not completely crazy. But at one time, there was a song in a dimension I was once in. Guy Mitchell sang a song called Pink Pomeranians, but now it doesn't exist. And that's my personal Nelson Mandela moment, that one.
Yeah.
But your one's better. I like that one with the road and the paving stuff. That's good, that is. Especially both of you saw it.
Yes.
Wow.
One other thing before we get on to the questions and answers, that we're talking about, like, in the dream, we consider some things good, some things bad.
Yeah.
And the Course says neither one is true.
They're not. It's like William Shakespeare said, like, nothing is either good or bad. Thinking makes it so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You think, and it's purely subjective what's good or bad. I mean, even a suicide bomber blows up a load of people. That's bad. But he thought it was good. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. He's not thinking, I'm going to be really bad and blow up some people. For whatever cause he did it for, he thought it was good. It's purely subjective, this good and bad business.
Well, especially if Trump was there.
Hey? Sorry?
Especially if Trump was there.
Oh, all right. Oh, well, I don't know. I keep out of them sort of discussions,
Yeah, me too. I'm just joking.
Yeah, I know, because I've learned. I know you're joking, mate. I know you are. I've learned anything to do with, if you've got any kind of political opinion, it's not a good idea. Sorry?
Does anybody have anything now? I'd just like to open it up. Does anybody, maybe we'll just shift we'll just like make a little shift here. If anybody would like make an expression or ask a question or make a comment or anything at all, like we'll just use the rest of our session as like an open house, kind of a discussion, whatever. Or maybe nobody has anything they'd like to contribute, but if you do, feel free. And maybe we'll take a couple of minutes now.
Good to see you here, Jeff. Haven't seen you for ages.
Yes, Jeff, nice to see you.
Jeff, yes, I keep saying Jeff.
Well,
Jeff.
that's okay too. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, we can, anybody, like you say, just put your hand up electronically and we'll just take you off mute. So maybe we'll just take a couple of minutes now if anybody wants to grab a coffee or contemplate something you want to ask or whatever, okay? Just take a couple of minutes break and we'll be right back in 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right. See you shortly.
See you then.
Sorry about that, guys. That was, I was talking there and I didn't realize I was on mute. So if anybody has anything they'd like to contribute, now is the time. Feel completely free. Stephen, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and Eli is now on mute as well. Just like you say, like just an expression session, anything goes here now over the next little while. So go ahead, Eli.
Okay, I'm glad anything goes, because all I wanted to say was, I looked up Guy Mitchell, and you're gonna have me singing the blues all day long now, Steve.
Oh, right, that's his best song.
Yes, it is, yes.
That was his best song. But he had she had a few singles by him. What was it? Delaware. What did Delaware, boy? What did
Oh,
Delaware?
yes, yep.
That,
So,
it was that was what Delaware, and this one, Pink Pomeranians, which there's no trace of. I know that song. You don't just imagine a title like Pink Pomeranians, let alone a song about it. Like, you know, because in that day, in the 60s, when that song came out, like Hollywood ladies and the women about town used to dye their little Pomeranian poodles pink, didn't they? Yeah, that was a fashion. They were a fashion accessory at the time, pink, little pink dogs.
Right.
Yeah. So that gives it credibility that the song even existed, which it did in another dimension.
since no one else has their hand up yet, I'll add to the laugh. Then when I was a little girl, about 5 years old, in the neighborhood, there were twin ladies, and they would have been, say, 30, 40. And they both had white poodles. One dyed their own hair blue and their poodle's hair blue, and the other one dyed their hair pink and their poodle's hair pink. And we watched them walk their dogs up and down the street. It was really funny to see.
That gives my memory. I could imagine that gives my memory even more credence.
There you go.
Yeah, cheers. There was a Pink Pomeranian. Yeah. Well, perhaps I'll slip back into the dimension one day and rehear it again. I don't know.
All righty.
See, Eli.
Gotta have some laughs.
That's it. Okay, anybody else? Have anything they'd like to share? Anything going on with you that you'd like to sort of express, or anything at all?
Pretty quiet today.
Yeah.
I just opened my book here, and it just a bit where I'd put my highlighter on. It says, as you teach, so shall you learn. As you teach, so shall you learn. And that's what I said earlier. That's why I've always sort of made videos and spoke, because I found like I've learned by what I've actually spoke.
Right.
You know, I see it seems to come out. I don't, because when I make those videos, I never think about what I'm going to say. I just think about a subject or an aspect of it, and then just start talking.
Right.
But they're never edited. You know, it just comes out, and they stop naturally. You know.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm channeling Christ, but something's happening, because I'm not making that stuff. I'm not saying that, a lot of that stuff.
Yes.
You know, so I must have. In fact, I was thinking of trying to channel it like Erin does, but I've never done that before. But that might be a next step for me.
Right.
I think you have to feel a bit inspired to do that. There's another Tina Spalding. Do you know Tina Spalding? She's a Canadian.
Yes.
She did a whole, because I did a whole year of lessons, and so did she.
Right.
You know, Tina Spalding.
Yeah.
She yeah.
I've heard of her. I think I've heard her once. A friend of mine was.
Yeah, she tends to be independent now. She doesn't sort of like, she does her own thing. And I think she's moved to Sedona, like so many do. And she works out of there, and she runs a club. She runs a big club now. But you have to. She was free, but now you have to pay to listen to her. You know, I suppose she's got a bit skint, I suppose,
Right.
as you do.
Yeah.
But she's good. She's good. You know. Yeah.
Okay.
She must have done hundreds of videos.
Yeah. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Angela.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciated your reading parts of the Bible. It's
Oh, thank you.
and I just want to add to that just to close that, because I'm probably going to address something to Lloyd in a minute too, and not to overstep you, but you know, I guess I want to say, as a symbol, Jesus, you know, he was just a symbol of rising from the cross, from darkness to light. And that sort of was what stays with me.
Mm.
And so I appreciate all the words that, really coinciding with, you know, keeping Jesus in, and yeah, was Jesus really there? No, yeah, no, he was the dream. So, and I appreciated Lloyd's input on, putting that together. That makes it clearer of Jesus. So thank you for that. And I do want to ask you, Lloyd, because you brought this up a couple times, and I really feel like I need clarification on, consciousness has nothing to do with God. And the reason for that is when I think of, there was, I forget he was, I can't always say his name, Osho something, and showed how if you talk to water, and he was scientifically proved that if you talk negatively to water, you may, or if you talk lovingly to water, you're going to get two different patterns. It was scientifically proven. Mm. And so on that note also, you'll hear about like people eating that are from the sun, that are healthy, believe it or not, I think the Italians used to pick dandelions. My mom didn't, but and cook them. And they have a lot of some people make dandelion wine. And the other thing that kind of came to my mind, or people like women get ocean or chlorophyll, ALJ for the skin. So can you kind of clarify that? Because for me, I see that as, I know that as bodies, we are temples, so we take care of them. So I feel that all kind of comes together with us. Yes.
Good question.
But the body, with the body, we are a temple, we are a vehicle, we are a communication device. So I don't know if I'm making any sense, or where I'm coming from with that. So Lloyd, could you please elaborate on it? Thank you.
Well, consciousness, it says in A Course in Miracles, consciousness was the first split after the separation. Consciousness is known as the realm of the ego. And within the dream, anything can happen. I mean, it's all made up. No matter what you're seeing with eyes that were made not to see, it's simply not true. So
the word consciousness is, oh, sorry, I was interrupted.
Just that things can change within the dream, and there can seem to be some very loving things happening in the dream. But it's duality. You get the lovely, but you get the grotesque along with it. That's duality. So yes, I remember all the experiments done with water where, water changes molecular structure depending on, how it was viewed, right? From different aspects. But still, that is still within the realm of consciousness. The ego can do anything. The ego made this world, and it actually likes this world. So within the realm of consciousness, anything can happen. And everything does happen. Except in the realm of heaven or God, there is no such thing as form. It's all abstract love. There is no form. It says on page 681 in the Course in Miracles, God knows not form. And God doesn't even know that we're here. Because if God knew we were here, we'd be in trouble. We'd have no home to go home to. Like if he had granted us our wish to be an individual, we'd be stuck here forever. But God didn't recognize, he didn't give in to our pleading with him. Oh, please make me an individual. I'm not happy with everything. You know, I want to experience not having everything. And how's that working for us? But when you actually experience what the Course calls direct revelation, you will know without a doubt that this world does not exist. And every mind is going to experience that. It's already a done deal. It just happens. It appears that it happens at different times for different parts of the mind that think they're separated. But it will happen. It will be given to every mind, and it's already decided when that's going to happen. And through that experience, you will understand exactly there is no world and that you've never left your source in God. You just simply had a nightmare dream. And, you know, the Holy Spirit is our way of awakening from the dream. Holy Spirit's not a person. The Holy Spirit is just our memory that God planted in our mind that we could never forget where we came from and who we really are. And we can't wake up suddenly because the ego is very resilient, and to wake up suddenly would cause a lot of fear and would cause us not to have a really a happy awakening. In other words, that's why it has to be gradual. The Holy Spirit has to wake our mind up gradually, because as it is, there's a lot of fear to waking up. Like, how many of us right today would say, okay, you can go to heaven right now, this instant? What would our answer be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, in some of our cases now we've had
Yeah.
experience, we would say yes.
That's right.
But until we get to that level, and that can take years to undo the I that we think we are, we would hesitate because it's planted in our mind, it's fearful.
Yeah.
Oh, there is no I in heaven. Well, the ego doesn't like that. It likes the I. And when, you know, that's what the Course is all about, undoing that individual I. There is no individualism in heaven.
So, sorry to, so Lloyd, so the ego is actually helpful.
In what way?
What do you mean by that now?
Okay, so, you know, when we talk about, like, I guess the holy ego, if you want to call it, or, you know, not, but because if you say consciousness is one with ego.
Consciousness is the ego.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, consciousness is thought. Consciousness is our thinking. There's nothing to think about in oneness because everything is known. There's only one, and it's known. We don't need to think.
No.
It's known. We only become conscious, and that's conscious of things around us. There's nothing to be conscious of with God. There's only start being conscious when there's things to be conscious of. And that's why consciousness is of the ego, because he's suddenly conscious of all this stuff around us. Once he gets back home, that all stops because you just know.
Exactly.
All is known.
Okay, thank you. That's
Very good.
Yeah, like
got it.
like
Got it.
says, if you have to be conscious of something else.
Yeah, that's it. If in oneness, there's nothing to be conscious of. It's just knowledge. You just know.
It's pure
Consciousness
knowledge.
is the ability to think that
And
comes with the ego.
And that's
Yeah.
what direct revelation is. Direct revelation is pure knowledge.
Yeah, sure.
experience
Direct
pure
relation is pure love. And I've had two revelations in my life. One after my first wife died, she come back, she covered me in love. And two is something, it's tangible. It's not, but it feels like you could hold it, like some kind of cotton wool stuff. She covered me in it, right? I didn't know that's what a true revelation was. Another time I was in Australia and unbidden, it came to me. And I was just covered in love, and it was incredible. And I never thought they were revelations until I was told in the course that revelations are aspects of pure love. Before then, I thought revelations was suddenly knowing something. Oh, that's why that is then.
Right.
No, there's nothing more revelatory than realizing that everything is perfect love. I didn't get it when that was years ago, those incidents happened, but I remember them, and it's just, oh God, you do not want it to go. You do not want it to leave. You're trying to, and as it leaves you, you're trying to hang on to it and pull it back.
Exactly.
It's you know, it's something wonderful, truly, truly wonderful. You know, and
it can't be experienced in the world. When you experience this, you're actually outside of consciousness when that happens.
Yeah.
There's really no true love in this world. There's
Not like that.
aspects of love here that bring us to to the truth of what love is, but the actual experience of the love of God is so far beyond this world that there's no words for it. You can't even explain it.
Well, anyone who's experienced it in any afterlife or anything like that, they say there was so much love, I cannot put it into words. It's beyond words.
Yeah.
Words are all we've got to explain stuff is words, and that's really explaining the Course of Miracles is like a word game, trying to get the accurate words to put across exactly what you want to say,
Right.
especially when you're playing. I mean, there's a friend, he's a good friend of mine, actual Facebook friend of mine, I used to argue with all the time because he's so precise about the use of the words. He was saying that God has thoughts. I was saying he doesn't have thoughts. And then what about where it says God projected his thought? And I said, that just means he's dreaming. Well, then he has thoughts then, doesn't he? Yeah, but you have to give some kind of poetic license to all this. When you're discussing it's how you see it. If it works with you, if you think like God had a thought, as it says he did, but actually to interpret it as a thought rather than as a dream, you've got an argument with me. But God doesn't actually think about anything. He's oneness. Consciousness is the ego. It's the fuel for the ego is oneness, of course. It's a living force behind everything. But it's an illusion. It's a dream. Well, I'm dreaming at night. I'm dreaming about people walking about, but they're all my creations. If you dream about people sitting on a beach, even the grains of the sand are my creations. Everything in the dream is made out of me and my mind. And that's a clue, really, because everything here is made out of him. And when I'm dreaming, I think it's all real, every bit of it, until I wake up and think, what the hell was that? What was that all about?
Yeah.
But I thought it was real while I was dreaming. And now I'm dreaming in a larger dream, an overall general dream, and I'm still thinking it's real. Until when I wake up, I'll be like waking up in the morning, thinking,
Yeah,
it's just the same. How is it different?
Yeah, it
It's
says
the same.
our sleeping dreams and our waking dreams are identical.
They're the same. We just slip from one to the other. But we actually, the trick is we seem to create our own little dream made up of our memories and self. Actually, the greater dream's made up out of memories as well. That's why it says. That's why you've got to forget your past, because you make your future out of your past, right? I did that last time, the last time they did that. And you create your future from the past, when really you should have perfect, as it teaches, you should have perfect trust in Jesus or the Holy Spirit that he will lead you through. Don't think about what you're going to do, just do. And don't be afraid to, because that fear is what's stopping you doing it. Because you think, if I do that, it might go terribly wrong if I don't figure out a plan first. Just do it and just feel what's in your heart.
Trust.
Trust,
I mean, like the heart bit, they say what's in your intuition. I mean, really, as intuition is actually your mind, not your heart. You can't. It's the heart is seen. I mean, I spoke about this once before, but it's not to do with the Course of Miracles. But the ancients saw like that the spirit was in the middle of your body and it radiated out from there, kind of thing. Like, so when they say the heart, they don't mean the pump, they mean just center, which is where the spirit is supposed to be placed, you see. But really, there isn't like that, really. The mind, the heart, I mean, you say it's nice to believe it comes from your heart, and people do get feelings in their heart, and it could be to do, that's where the spirit is placed, maybe. But actually, it's the mind. It's nothing to do with the body or the action pump. It's anything within the body. It's not, when it says look within, you don't mean look within your body, they mean look within your mind.
Exactly.
That's where it is. Yeah. But actually, that misleads a lot of people. I've heard people say, well, what do you look for inside your body? You don't. It's in the mind. But there's a lot of misleading. They're not purposely misleading. All of the Course of Miracles is written in a way to make you think. And you have to go over and over it until you get it. And of course, different people get it in different ways. But that's their individual path.
Absolutely. And it's funny you should mention that, because when I first started this whole journey, I did believe when it said, the answer's within, I thought, wow, the answer's within my body somewhere.
It'd be heart somewhere. Yeah, that's good. I thought it was talking about the heart, and that's misleading, but no, it's not that. It's your mind, within your mind.
Yeah. And Angela, just one more thing. In the Course, you'll see it, and I haven't got it handy at the moment, but it talks about that we receive in consciousness.
Yeah.
Like if we get inspired thought, we receive it within consciousness. But it says in the Course, The inspired thought comes from beyond consciousness.
Does not emanate in
Does
consciousness.
not emanate in consciousness. I'll look it up for you after and
Well, it
I'll
says
send it to you.
consciousness is
Yeah.
the receptive mechanism
Right,
whereby we receive messages from the Holy Spirit or the ego.
from above or below it.
Mm.
So that will
Okay.
tell you that there must be something beyond consciousness. That's when I first understood, that from the Course. When I read that line, it said, there is something beyond consciousness. And then it really made me understand what it meant by consciousness being the realm of the ego. Now, sometimes consciousness is used in the correct manner. Other ways of getting back to God. It's not, not just through the Course in Miracles. The Course says that's only one way. And consciousness is used, in some circles as being divine.
Yeah.
And that's understandable because I've never read anything other than in the Course where it actually explained that consciousness is two-ness. In other words, your conscious is something else other than God, which, just resonated with me 100%. That made total sense. So if you look up consciousness, in the Course in Miracles app, I think it only mentions consciousness about 10 times maybe. And it really, if you read it, it explains, especially that one about being, we receive from above or below.
Receptive mechanism.
Yeah, the receptive.
And
mechanism.
it also says that consciousness, we can achieve higher levels within consciousness, but it's still in the realm of the ego, right?
I mean, even Muji, I love Muji, but he teaches consciousness sort of being of God.
Yes, a lot of teachers
But
do.
Muji hasn't read A Course in Miracles.
Right, a lot of, that's just a thing, right? I mean, it's just a word when it all comes
Just a
down to it.
word.
But in
Yeah.
the Course, we kind of understand like what
Yeah.
it's all about. I think it's really the pure non-dualistic nature of
Yeah.
Course in Miracles, which means that God is outside of time and space. God is outside of consciousness.
I just want to read something to you here very quickly. I think this is so beautiful. I read it this morning. Just one paragraph in the Reason and Perception called The Forgotten Song. I love this. It says, beyond the body, beyond the sun and stars, past everything you see, and yet somehow familiar, is an arc of golden light that stretches as you look into a great and shining circle. And all the circle fills with light before your eyes. The edges of the circle disappear, and what is in it is no longer contained at all. The light expands and covers everything, extending to infinity, forever shining with no break or limit anywhere. Within it, everything is joined in perfect continuity, nor is it possible to imagine that anything could be outside, for there is nowhere that this light is not. How beautiful is that?
Very
That's
beautiful.
lovely.
That is beautiful.
And
There's so
Yes.
much.
the mind of Christ.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Good.
Beautiful.
I'm complete. I'm wholly complete.
Very
Wow.
good. That's a very good question, or like comment or whatever there, Angela. That was a really well
Yeah.
well
And it's,
done. Yeah.
all we have to remember here is that if we're complete and we're sinless, as the Course clearly states, it says the Son of God is sinless and free, then all we really have to look at the world as being that. That's the end. If we see everybody as sinless and free and who they really are, we no longer take the world serious. And that's the simplicity of A Course in Miracles. It says innocence cannot be partial. It must be whole. For us to be innocent, we have to see it everywhere. That's how we get our innocence. Because there's only us. There's only one of us. There's nothing outside of that oneness.
Anybody
So-
else? something they'd like to
Yeah.
contribute, guys? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Just further to what Lloyd was saying, there's I saw a video some years ago of an Indian guy, like, you know, and he was saying to realize the oneness of everybody, he recognizes that everybody's got a skeleton. This is just an interest. Everybody's got a skeleton. If you look through people straight at their skeleton, you realize they've all got the same skeleton, they've all got the same skull, and see that skeleton as their spirit. It helps you to understand that they aren't really who they think they are. You know, and it's just a way, it's an association thing. And I thought that's pretty good, you know, like, you know, see them as spirit, realize that they've got a skeleton, same as you, and their skeleton doesn't do anything, same as you. It's just sits there and holds you up. So as a spirit does, if you could make that kind of association, it helps you to understand the lesson. I thought that was pretty good.
That's not the same thing as saying everybody has a skeleton in their closet.
No.
I've got loads of them. No, that's why I got the Course in Miracles in the first place, to get rid of them. And I have.
Yeah.
And I have. It changed my life drastically. It changed my life drastically. I met Victoria through the Course in Miracles, you know, and I'm a very lucky man, you know what I mean, to discover the Course in Miracles. It changed my way of thinking, and what I project now is reflected back in the love that I've got all around me.
Yes.
I'm a very happy man through the Course in Miracles.
Me too.
Yes, it's beautiful.
And you know, that's how you can tell the Course in Miracles is working. You don't have to believe the Course in Miracles. You will
Yeah.
see it in your life.
Right.
Somewhere in it, it says the only way you can really test it, your progress, is to stop and think, how was I 6 months ago?
Exactly.
Compare yourself to where you were, and occasionally stop and compare yourself how you were 6 months ago, and then you can measure your progress. You know.
Tammy,
that's-
go ahead and unmute yourself, Tammy.
Hey, I don't have anything except for gratitude. I'm so grateful that each and every one of you are in my dream. That's all I want to say.
I'm glad to be there. Thanks for having me.
That's beautiful, 'cause we are really, all of us are just leading each other home. We're all holding on. Nobody's ahead, nobody's behind. We're the
All one.
equal sons of God.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Me too.
Me too.
Me too. I am grateful. Every day I just stop and think, I am so grateful. I am so grateful. You know, I really am.
Yes.
Well, we look back
Beautiful.
even, you know, a few years ago. And you're right, Stephen. I mean, it's like it's hard to believe that there can be so much change, right? And yet we're learning what is changeless.
Right.
Yeah, it's like God, it never changes. He is stillness. He is changeless. He is infinite. He is forever. Where this is a world of constant motion. It's always in motion. No 2 seconds are the same. The fish has gone further in the sea. The bird's flown further in the air. The blood has moved further around the veins. You cannot keep still in this existence. You can try with a meditation, but you've still got your atoms whizzing around, your molecules, or neutrons whizzing around the atom or whatever. It's a world of motion. It's a
Yes.
world of motion. And these freak, like what earlier on was talking about the vibrations on water. Is it Dr. Yamamoto or something? Anyway, that's all frequency, isn't it? You just change the frequency and the pattern changes. That's how we're made up. The frequency. It's just like television and different channels. There's frequencies that our bodies are holding us all together. Tesla discovered all this apparently, but they didn't want people to know about it, so they filed it all away. But we're all sort of like, we're all made up of frequencies, and they can change at any time. You turn over the television, like when you went into your new dimension, somehow the channel changed. Do you get what I mean? But it's like, it's just the frequency alters and you go somewhere else.
That's how Jesus walked on water. He waited to the frequency change the ice.
Well, yeah. Must have been cold on the old feet, though, I suppose. I hope he had his sandals with him. I'd have seen the Mediterranean freeze up anyway. Yeah, it would have been the Mediterranean, wouldn't it? Yeah.
We do have to laugh, and that's one thing I think Jesus teaches us, I think.
Laughing is a sign of happiness, the sound of happiness.
Right.
When people are, no matter how ill people feel, if they start laughing for that moment, they're better. You know, laughter is the sound of happiness.
Here's a little Easter joke for you. Jesus walks into the Ramada Inn and he slaps down 4 rusty nails on the counter.
Yeah.
And he says to the clerk behind the counter, he says, "You think you could put me up for the night?"
Oh, oh, I'll tell you another one, right? There's a bloke fishing by the river, right? Bloke's fishing by the river, and the bailiff comes along. He says, "Excuse me, have you got a license?" He says, "I don't need a license. I'm Jesus." He said, "What do you mean you're Jesus?" He says, "I don't need a license. I fish where I like." He said, "Well, if you're Jesus, do a miracle." He said, "What do you want me to do?" He says, "Walk on water." He said, "Okay, hold me rod." He walks in, he's up to his neck going, glug, glug. He comes back on the side. He said, "I thought you said you could walk on water." He said, "Yeah, but I didn't have these holes in my feet before."
Oh.
Anyway, it's just as bad as your one anyway.
Yeah, two bad jokes don't necessarily make one good one.
Yeah, good job. Jesus got a sense of humor anyway. There's the other one where he says, "I can see your house from here." You know, that stupid old joke, you know. Anyway, that's enough of them.
Guys, I'm going to stop the recording after those lovely jokes here now. We're just going to stop the recording. Okay. Thank you, Stephen. And I'm going to just invite everybody to unmute yourself so we can thank Stephen. Okay. Just hang on now. Allow everybody to unmute themselves. Well,
Thank you so much, Steve. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Steve.
Thanks a
Enjoy.
lot.
Thank you, Stephen.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
It was a great get together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lloyd and staff. Thank you.
Thank you.